Good luck,
And
everyone.
good afternoon, everyone. Hey,
Hello, good morning.
Good
Hey, my
morning.
name's Walter Jennings, and I'm the moderator of this panel. And we're talking about brand strategy in the digital world. And to help people kick this off, I wanted to start by asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us why they're relevant to the subject of brand strategy in the digital world. And as I'm already talking, I'll kick off. My name's Walter Jennings. I am in Hong Kong, and I lead communications and marketing at a company called Hash Group, which is a cryptocurrency exchange applying for SFC licensing here. And this is a large Chinese technology company that is trying to position itself as a Western-friendly brand. And so it's all occurring online all of the time. So we have people from around Europe here, and I'll call out a city name, and hopefully someone will be able to recognize where they live and introduce themselves. So let's start with Warsaw and Marta.
Hi, my name is Marta Cwalina-Śliwińska, and I've been working for Mars Incorporated for 12 years, taking care and building strategies for the M&M's, Snickers, Twix, Mars, Bounty brands in Poland. And now I run my own strategic marketing consulting company. So I advise my clients, big companies, smaller companies, startups on how to build their strategies, brand strategies, and how to build their business based on brands, thanks to efficient marketing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marta. We're pleased to have you on the panel. And when we get to the insights in consumers, we'll definitely be coming to you. Now, while we're in Poland, let's go from Warsaw to Krakow.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm Maciej. Actually, we've been competitors because I started with Nestle and I was doing marketing, but actually for the coffee products, so not so directly. But then I moved to consulting, and for 15 years I was doing pricing, revenue optimization, those kind of things, building product architecture. And now I'm a partner at the VC here in Poland. So what I basically do is I try to, let's say, turn all those brand strategy efforts into tangible results in the form of revenues or profits. So boring.
Fantastic. Maciej, thank you very much. And let's go to Brighton.
Hello there. Hi there. My name is Calandra Balfour, and I'm in Brighton, just south of London in the UK. I'm an entrepreneur here, so I own several businesses in retail, in hospitality, property. But where a lot of my passion is I business mentor small business founders. So, I mean, I have businesses myself. So instead of just telling people what they should be doing, I actually practice what I preach, and I can see the effects of how marketing done well or not done that well can really impact on a business. And my God, I've made all of the mistakes.
Well, Calandra, that's the benefit of experience. We've seen it all, but thank you very much. Look forward to learning more. And while we're in the UK, let's pop up to London.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm Alexander. I help brands create stories, emotional stories, find their purpose. And I've been working for the past 11 years, helping small businesses stand up for what they believe in and communicate that and articulate that so people that care about the causes and obviously ultimately make them care about the product and or the services.
Fantastic. Well, for those of you who are watching, we have two ways. The easiest way to ask us questions is on the chat. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. And if you want to pose a question to the panel or to any of the panelists, just drop that comment in there and we'll get to it. But I wanted to kick off because I started my career in public relations a while back when you had 2 weeks to write a press release and a crisis was something you planned. And nowadays, it seems we're always on 24/7. So kind of my question is, managing the flood, how do you kind of stay ahead of the story and how do you think through, how has brand strategy changed in an always-on world. And let me, Maciej, if this is something you might have a view on, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, we are now in a situation that you have to really expect the unexpected, but still, what I truly believe is that you need to have those real, stories that you believe in, that you always can kind of return to. So those are like genuine things that you want to communicate, and despite of all the turmoil happening all around. So I think this is really the important lesson that I have, especially during those, strange times these days.
Fantastic. Well, Marta, I imagine that there might have been some challenges during your time at M&M Mars.
Yes, the challenges have been like every day, but now it's been some years when I stopped working on the brand. But what I would say that managing the flat for 24/7, if you have all the resources, if you have a big marketing department, if you have high budgets, then yes, you can manage the flat 24/7, being always active globally, locally, and as Maciej said, plan the unexpected and answer all the crises. But very few companies probably have that many resources, or maybe some of the ones that people who are watching or are part of this conference. So if you don't have the resources to be 24/7 active and do everything that you want to do, you really have to choose wisely. So from the brand strategy perspective, I would choose to communicate, to focus on what's really make your brand distinctive. So what makes your brand unique and famous to your consumers? Because if every company, or if so many companies communicate always 24/7, that means that there are trillions of messages, trillions of advertising, of news, or anything, of pictures, memes, films, whatever you name it. So if you don't stand out, if you're not distinctive, if you don't get any emotions to your customers, to your clients, to your viewers, simply, you will not, all this effort would go in vain. So if people don't notice you, they will not remember. If they don't remember, they will not buy you. If they don't buy it, well, that's about it for your brand, right? So in all this managing the flood of doing everything, I would make a standstill for a moment and think what really needs to be communicated to make your brand distinctive and make people know about it. So make something that is just true to your brand and no other.
Well, I'm going to go off we as a panel had an agreed question list, because you mentioned something, Maciej mentioned something about stories you believe in and what makes your brand unique. And Alexander, you just told us that you're an emotional storyteller. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that stories you believe in comment?
Yeah, basically I agree that we need to have stories. The problem I think that most companies have is they communicate logical stories, and by logical stories they communicate about price, they communicate about features, we're the best, location, and all that stuff, which is really, that's why people don't become loyal to brands. So in order to build loyalty, you need to communicate the story that you believe in, and to look at things from a different perspective it's not what's trending right now, it's not what people want to hear, it's what do you believe, why do you run that business. It goes deep into your heart and soul, and communicating, what, I believe in this, regardless if BLM is trendy or something else is trending, or animal rights, or there's so many topics that you can choose. But the number one thing I believe is most stories are fabricated because we need more sales. So I think this is trending. I think we can put a flag and say that we believe in this, but people know that, and people understand that it's not true. So that's why they don't have loyal clients. A lot of businesses don't get loyal clients because they don't treat people like they don't ask for a proposal. They treat them like a one-night stand. So I think the best thing to do is to go back to look at what story is, because a story is not a statement. Most companies, they say we're the best company, or we have this, which are statements. It's not a story. A story has a beginning. It has a beginning. A story needs to have an obstacle, a problem, something that you believe in. So there are different elements into that goes into storytelling, but the most important is like, what do you stand for, and what are you willing to stand for, even when 100 people say I don't want to buy from you, but those 5 people that choose to buy from you, they will be there, and even when you're in trouble, they will be there. And great examples, we can look at big brands like Apple and Nike, but there are smaller brands like there's a UK brand called Huel, which they're a small company, but they have a loyal following where people just, they're loyal, they're there for them. And that's one of the reasons, is because they have a story that relates and they stand for something.
Calandra, we talked about managing the flood, and Marta had experience at the large company, but you tend to work with smaller retail operations. So how do you advise people, and how do you manage to stay on top when you're in a smaller organization or your own business?
Yeah, thank you, Walter. Well, I really am echoing a lot of what Marta says, but reframing it, if you want. So, even your question, managing the flood, this 24/7, always switched on, always being bombarded by marketing messages and companies is a bad thing. And I go against the tide and I say, don't be part of the problem. I think that if everybody did this, then we wouldn't be suffering as consumers of marketing, because I really do think we do. We are always on. There's always something, a message, non-consensual messaging being bombarded to our eyeballs, whether we like it or not. So don't be part of the problem. I think what I tell people is it is more important to get on with what you're doing, be consistent with what you're doing, and making sure that you're reaching out to the people that need to hear you, as well as reminding your customers that you already have what you do so that they remember you. Do that, and you don't need to be 24/7, and it gets across what Marta was saying about really being authentic and having a message that will be heard and listened to. And I think that that's far more important. You open up any kind of HubSpot or Hootsuite guides to digital marketing, like social media, and they say, you need to have tweets 4 times a day, you need to do this, you need to do that, and now stories and reels and rooms and groups, and that's just social media. And if somebody does all of that, they've got no time to actually do what they do, which is run their business and make money. So yeah, just consistently.
I tell clients, because that the world of communication planning has changed so dramatically that when I started my career, you had the time to build out an annual plan, and you would develop all of your programs, and you would pre-write your messages and your materials, and suddenly now we're, I think, shifting more towards what I would call values-based communication, where instead of building an entire house, you build a steel frame, and that will never shift no matter what. This is the way we operate. This is our voice. This is what we stand for. These are the truths that will never bend no matter what. And then you just let everything blow through the steel frame. And as long as you remain true to those girders and those central tenets, then you can handle the flood or the quieter times, but remaining yourself. And as you said, Alexander, it's about finding an emotional connection and finding what you have in common with the core audience. So yeah, it isn't easy, but I think if you create those truths, then that will remain your North Star.
Yeah, if I can add one thing to it, is that this consistency that you mentioned is, you don't build a brand in a month, in a year even. So it takes really, it takes longer time. And to build a brand, you need the trust of the consumer. So they first have to notice you, remember, like you, trust you, and then they buy from you. So if you change the message, if you change the brand every month, or everything comes and then you said, oh, I'll go this way and this way, you start building the brand from the very beginning. So it takes 10 times as long time. It takes 10 times as much money. So don't build your brands every month from the scratch. Just be consistent with it.
Okay, but I have to comment on this one, because like for instance, I'll give you a case of one of the companies we have in our portfolio. It's a restaurant chain, like salad bars. We've got 50 locations all around Poland. It's been super successful, but obviously COVID did hit us. Did we change our communication? Hell yes, we did.
Of course.
Like everything got totally upside down. Instead of speaking, for instance, about the quality of the ingredients, the novelties in our menus, stuff like that, we totally shifted into speaking about the security of the preparation process. We went way more personal, speaking about this is Kate, she works in our location this and there, say hello to her, maybe you have some questions. So we totally changed the game. So obviously, as I said in the beginning, you have to have those core values you believe in, but then at the same time you have to be agile to adjust to what's happening in the real world. So let's not forget about it.
Yeah, change the communication for sure. That just don't change your brand.
Yeah, sure.
No, but Walter, can I ask you actually? Because I think what everyone's talking about is about the designing the plane when you're flying and actively building your brand strategy as you go along. So what would you have to say about that, Walter?
Well, I like Marta's comment how brands aren't built overnight, and yet you have to be extremely fast, flexible, responsive. I always find that the time you spend at the beginning getting to know the management, getting to know the client, getting to know the business, getting to know what it's trying to achieve helps you set a longer term vision. So I tell my clients that it's kind of like looking through the eye of a needle and seeing in the distance a camel, and you will eventually get there, but you're not there yet. And everything you do should line up to help you achieve that over a long period of time. And it can take long periods of time. I worked 3 years at Huawei, and Huawei has a 25-year business plan, and each of the operating divisions has a 5-year plan to help them achieve that. And they don't review it annually. They'll go through these phases. So it really requires a longer term dedication. And that was an anathema to me, because being with European or American employers in the past, they're looking quarter to quarter and looking for the short term wins. When you're working with a company that's working towards a 25-year plan, I mean, it's insane. So yeah, how do you guys counsel your clients on kind of building the brand for the long term amidst all this turmoil? Calandra?
Well, I think it's what you were talking about in the previous question, having that really solid frame to work on. And I think as long as a company really knows what they do and their values and their mission, then they can be flexible with other things. But I think what's really important about this, being flexible, is really having that those beliefs and that brand within the company. So it is a company culture as well, so that any message that comes out from it really is authentic and it does all fit together. But it's definitely about communication and changing it, just making sure the right hand speaks to the left hand at all times. I know a certain delivery company, I'm not going to name their name, but they're pretty global. The owner says that he likes to have teams that everybody can sit around and have a pizza. And for me, that really stuck in my head, that even when you're making really big decisions, you need to make sure you can get everyone around a pizza and get everybody on board at the same time, even if it's lots of smaller groups that do that. So yeah, communication is key.
Fantastic. Well, Alexander, how do you integrate storytelling into brand strategy? How do brands tell stories?
Well, the first thing they have to do is sit at the table with the pizza. But the most important element, I think, is you have to be vulnerable. And the problem with that is a lot of decision makers they are not willing to be vulnerable, because in order to create a story, an authentic brand story, you need to ask deep questions. And every time, like, I do a story and I ask deep questions, they're like, no, but I don't want to go into that. But that's where the magic is. Like, why did you buy this company? Why did you start this company? Okay, what do you do outside your work? So you have to add personal elements, like, you might do running, you might do whatever you might do, horse riding, for example. You have to find, and from those elements you see some themes. So for example, if someone does horse riding or running, it can say endurance, or so you find the character traits, and then you add that into your story, because otherwise all the other things, location, price, they communicate to the left hand side of the brain, which is logic, which is, yeah, it's £5, that's fine, I'll find the cheaper one. It's a look at Amazon. It's a game that you'll never win. There's always someone who's willing to do something for cheaper. But then you have other premium products, premium brands, where you pay double the price and people don't care because they're emotionally connected. So in order to create a story and to add a story into a brand strategy, you need to have those emotional elements, which are different for every company. But the core is like personality, like what do you like, what do you love, why should we care?
So, Alexander, I love hearing about things that go right, but I gotta ask about mistakes in brand strategy. And Calandra, before we started, you were talking about how this was a question you wanted to ask, and I've been desperate to ask it ever since you told me that. So let's talk about mistakes in brand strategy. Any thing you want to share?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it really follows on from what Alexander was talking about, is people not putting themselves in a brand. And I mean, I'm talking from a small business perspective, but it also applies to bigger brands as well. You need to have people in it. People buy from people. And this is a business to business as well as business to consumer. I think that applies across both. And I think it is difficult to kind of separate those things, but they're one and the same, because it's still the people at the other end. So you need to put yourself at the beginning, at the center and up front of a brand. I mean, for example, Elon Musk has got so many more followers on Twitter than Tesla. Everybody knows Elon, even if they don't know that he makes cars, for example. And so that is a perfect example of somebody who's really put themselves up front and really made them part of the brand, and that almost sells the rest. What he says affects the share price like that, positively and negatively, unfortunately. But yeah, it's what Alexander was saying. It's about emotion, it's about connection, it's about really giving somebody a reason to buy your product over somebody else's, and it's so easily fixed. But there is always this resistance of people wanting to share something of themselves, not wanting to be vulnerable, or being shy, wanting to stay in the background, like, oh no, they don't need to see me, don't worry about that. But it really is important. And even what Maciej was saying about the salad brand, the salad chain during the pandemic, they're focusing on the people that work there, and highlighting those people. Nike, amazing brand, and they have all of their stars. Jordan is synonymous. Michael Jordan is synonymous with Nike, and was for decades. So even though it isn't the founder of Nike, they definitely knew what they were doing, and they put a person, and a real person, right at the center of their messaging, which has sold their brand more than anything else that they've done, I think. So yeah, people is really the most important thing.
Fantastic. I wanted to come back, Marta, to you and ask you a question, not about your business today, but a bit about your experience. What happens when you've got a global brand that we all think we know? I mean, frankly, M&M's, right? How do you get people to rethink it? And how do you take a global brand and make it
grow it
Polish?
locally?
Yeah.
Well, actually, in the M&M's case, it was the other way around, because it was already some years ago when I took care of M&M's, and it was the brand that was out of radar of Polish consumers in case of purchasing, because globally it was #1 brand in chocolate. right? Yes. And then in Poland, less than 1% consumers of chocolate category bought it, but 85% knew the brand. 85% knew it, and very little people bought it. And that was the case that we decided to take the global learnings and make them available and make them relevant in Poland. And there were two most important things that were possible to do. First, we analyzed the consumer insights. So consumers told us globally that they want to share M&Ms with others. So the bigger packs were more valid and selling best in globally. And in Poland, we focused on the small packs because Mars was a bar company. We sold Snickers, Mars, Twix. So the small pack of M&Ms fit perfectly next to the bars. So it was easier, the distribution, etc. But the consumers, well, was irrelevant because you cannot share a small pack of M&Ms. You can try it, yes, you can have it on the go, but you wouldn't be satisfied with it because for that you need Snickers or something else. So there was 85% consumers, imagine, know your brand, love it, and they said, but why would I purchase it? I don't need it. So what we did, we changed the focus on everything, on distribution, on communication, on building the distinctive assets even more in the locally in Poland. And what it was, the result was that when we focus on the global insight and we checked them, of course, with the Polish consumers, well, guess what? They were the same. Polish consumers also wanted to share the brand. They also wanted to consume it at home and watch movies with it, etc. So when we changed the focus, changed the distribution, talked with all the sales team saying that, yes, now you take care of the bigger packs in the stores of exposition, etc. So all the physical and mental availability that we have been putting our efforts and money on the budget went to the bigger packs. So consumers find it relevant. And the brand, after we implemented the strategy in 4 years, it tripled the size. So you can imagine that that's really something that you can do in a relatively short period of time, right? It's not 1 year, but it's I think in 5 years it tripled the size of when I started to take care of it, and it's huge. That that's an immense, and that was just the change of the focus on what we sell to consumers and what we tell to consumers, but keeping true to the distinctive assets of the brand, keeping true to what's the brand essence. We didn't change the brand, but as Maciej gave the example before, we changed the communication, what was on about it.
Fantastic. So, well, yeah. I had a similar experience at Huawei, where beginning global international KOL relations, we found that people thought they knew the company, or they had a headline in their head. And the deeper we probed, we found that people just didn't understand. And the lack of understanding, along with new technology, led to sometimes fear. And so we just had to, like Alexander says, tell the story and help people get to know it at a deeper level and create a deeper connection. So Maciej and Alexander, I want to turn to you guys and ask what have we learned during the coronavirus pandemic, and how is it going to, what are some of the beneficial outcomes in terms of connecting with audiences, and what's changed in marketing and communications? Maciej, you mentioned the restaurants and others, but are there further learnings about communicating during the coronavirus pandemic that's shifting the way we approach marketing?
Yeah, like, what I try to do with different companies is to find answers to those basic questions, like, how have the habits, of your customers and consumers changed, and how might they change in the future? That's another important thing, because we are where we are today, but hopefully things gonna change. So, like, be prepared for what's gonna happen and anticipate that. So I think, those are really crucial questions, and because you really need to understand what are the current motivations of your customers to either, let's say, get in touch with your product, use your product. So and those definitely changed over time. And then the question is, when do you expect them to change in the future? So I will just, again, so staying with my salad example today. So like what we did is we changed the way we, for instance, so when you order an Uber or any other delivery service, you will get all the products sealed. And then, we also just put a certificate that like it was treated with some stuff, to potentially, get rid of any virus, for instance. The other thing, for instance, we do, of course, we incentivize customers to return. So, for instance, we give them a voucher or a coupon, something we didn't do before. So if you order again within the next 5 days, then you will get a free drink or a free delivery or this kind of stuff. So, and the third thing is, again, we always want to be very personal. So like we ask each person who's like preparing the dish, to put a personal note. So a bit like, like thanks for ordering, those kind of things. But so this is, for today. But also, I think, we already have a pretty solid plan on how to change once, the whole, hospitality business is going to open. So we know how we want to engage the customers after the whole pandemic. And I think, this is something that I would encourage a lot of companies to consider now. Of course, like for some of you, it might be miserable, but, are you ready when things hopefully going to turn out for the better?
Alexander, what are some of the lessons and changes that you're seeing?
I see that a lot of people, they became more self-aware and they started caring more about topics they didn't care before. It might be climate change, it might be animals, it might be, there's so many topics. I see that now that we have a new normal, there's like a lot of people, they stand against certain brands. So for example, there's a huge company that has pubs across the UK, and they did something that wasn't really nice in the beginning of the pandemic. And now their websites, their forums, that people are going against that brand. And I think people just started caring more about where they spend their money. Some people spend more on certain things. Some people spend less, like the likes of Amazon. So I think the biggest change that I see is people started caring about certain things, about their well-being, about their habits. And obviously, we all changed our habits, and certain things that we didn't do before, like, conferences or Zooms or, meetings on Zooms. People were like hesitant before, but now I think time will be a huge issue for people. They'll be like, okay, how can I save more time so I can do this or I can do that? So even like in London, a lot of companies, they say, oh, we'll work remotely. We'll just, hire a hotel, a conference room, and meet once per week. So there's so many things that change, but one of the things I think is self-awareness. People became more self-aware. Well, some people, you can't say everybody, but a lot of people had a lot of time to reflect, to read, and they realized, this is important. And there's an opportunity for brands to say, what, this is important for me too, or, step back and change industries and change careers. So yeah, I think caring and self-awareness and well-being is huge.
I was just going to say, Calandra, and then I'll come back to you. I was just going to say what I found the most surprising is how what we didn't think was possible is now daily. And, this pandemic began in China, came through Hong Kong, and a year ago or over a year ago, we thought, oh, it'll be 7-8 weeks and it'll only impact us. And no one ever anticipated. And just as an example, Hong Kong's a very international city, and we are, for all intents and purposes, closed. Our border is closed, and we do allow people to come back to Hong Kong if they've got residency. But if you don't have residency, you can't come into the country. And so, I was supposed to be speaking at this conference in Lithuania a year ago, and now a year later I'm on Zoom. And I never would have seen that. So, anyway, Calandra, what were you going to say?
I was just going to talk about how the pandemic really blurred the lines between the personal and the professional. And I think that really affected the way that business is conducted, which meant that it became a lot more personal in itself. All of a sudden we were coming to work, just opening up our laptops, at work, at home, with our families in the background, or our, whoever we lived with, or sometimes even the fact that there was no one there. But I think that blurred line between home and business, the personal and the professional, is definitely a good thing which has come out of it, that people can show up and be more authentic. I know I've used this word quite a few times, but people had to, if they were having a bad day, the news was awful, and they were at work, and they also, from a company perspective, this is the story that their consumers were living, so they had to appreciate that and acknowledge that as well. So it's all become a lot more real, and then we had the Black Lives Matter, and something that really comes to mind about some really horror stories about the way certain companies have handled certain things. And one company used the hashtag Black Lives Matter as a discount code for some of their products, and very much a white company as well. Just like, oh no, you just got that really wrong. That was really not reading the room properly at all. But I know we had a couple of stories, so I wanted to say that. But what I do think is good is, because of this blurred line, I was thinking about how before, working from home was almost something to be ashamed of. And if your company was completely digital, because this is what this panel is about, brand strategy in a digital world, then you had to pretend you had an office. You couldn't say that you worked at home, because there was a certain amount of shame around that. Like, what, your company isn't successful? What, you work from home? And I think that has really finally gone to be like, actually, no, I work at home because I choose to. Because of the past year we had to. Now it's something of like, yes, I've got a home office, and now it's a great, lucky you don't have to go anywhere or commute for an hour there and back. So I think that's been a real massive difference for people who do work in the digital sector.
And I think it's making brands get more personal, because we're inviting them now into our home even when we're working, and so it seems a lot more close. So, hey, we've got about 5-6 minutes left. Of course, we can take questions. Please use the public chat if you have any questions. But I wanted to talk about, we talked about war stories, and I actually broke this in two. Tell me the things you think are good successes, or things that were disasters. So, are there any, when we talk war stories, are there any that come to mind? And Marta, is there anything on the good or the bad that you want to reflect on?
Well, the one is an example of a client I work with that is used to own a travel agency for quite premium, personalized travels. So actually, as most of them, they went off business last year and were striving for survival. And when they came to me in September, they decided to go from this B2B travel agency to B2C, selling premium honey with fruit. And they asked me for a consultation. It's September. We have this idea, and we want to use it before Christmas, because Christmas is a perfect gift timing for this kind of things, of products. And that was a full success. I advised them on the strategy, and I advised them on consultation, on communication, on packaging, and they sold out all stock before Christmas. So they had this other trouble, meaning, well, we don't have product. You need to wait, for after Christmas to buy more. So that was something that I'm really, that, like Calandra, you said, that it gets personal, and it's not only that, I talk with my clients and I advise them what to do, and then I get the payment and we meet, once a week again. You live the life of your clients now, because
Definitely.
it's not anymore just a success of the brand. You know that are people behind it, family behind it. And now I work with a client who used to be a milk supplier to the schools in Warsaw and around Warsaw. As you can imagine, they went off business because the schools have been closed for a year, and they are starting now a new personal, like handmade table factory. So this is quite a change from a milk supplier to a furniture factory, but handmade. I'm missing the word in English. So this is something that I'm really keeping my fingers crossed, and this is something that gives even more satisfaction if it works. It's not only selling more, it's just changing people's lives. So this is something that really, like you said, Calandra, it blurred the line between business and personal.
Maciej?
Yeah, I just want to share another, let's say, digital case on how you can really shift your business, but still stay close to your core. So recently I've been working for one of the biggest, let's say, accommodation booking marketplaces. You probably all used it. And really, I spoke about how important it is to understand, how to resurrect your customers and who to resurrect and who's going to come back in what sequence. So like for this booking marketplace, they had, like in the history, they had two very strong segments. Those were business travelers and international family holidays. And obviously, both of those are rather unlikely to be the first one to come back. So what they did is they shifted focus more, catering to the local travelers in the first place, because they I know it's kind of obvious, but you need to figure it out, for your own way. Who is your local traveler for your own business that's going to come back, in the first place? But then getting, on the supply side, they had, huge supply of those huge accommodations and hotels with plus 50 beds. And obviously, as a traveler, you would probably rather go to let's say, a guest house with 2 or 3 rooms than to a big hotels. So again, what they did is they shifted their focus more promoting those local small accommodations. So it sounds pretty obvious, but try to figure out for your own way how to resurrect both, of those sides of your business for your own case.
Yeah, look, I think every single person in this webinar, either as a panelist or as an audience member, learned about flexibility, learned about pivoting, learned about being able to change business strategies. And each person here speaking has learned how to kind of reinvent or shift and find the market. We've had to do it. Any war stories, good and bad, Alexander?
No, there's plenty of good and bad stories. I mean, I failed plenty of times. And there's some successes. One success is we worked with a client 2 years ago. We created a story. And when we create a story, our strategy for content is usually to focus not on the product. So we created content. It was 2 months in, and it was like the sales were the same. Then 3 months in, the sales were the same, because we never focus on the product. Like, the product is 5% of our content strategy. 95 is like valuable content that can help the audience, the customers. On the 4th month, they got 1,500 increase in sales percent from previous year. And that just shows, because the client didn't lose faith, but he was like, well, you said it will take 2 months, because I usually say it's 2 to 3 months. I said, well, we're a bit late, but this number is much more better. And it just shows me, like, I was starting to think maybe for this client, but then it just proved to me that you need to have a story. You need to focus on the value that you bring. That's not about the product. If you sell mags, it's not about the mag, is what they can do when drinking your cup of tea or coffee. So that's one success. One time that we failed, we created a story. We had a story, but then we decided, due to the pandemic, to create an e-commerce store for that brand using the story. But the product was a different product. It was a totally different product, and it was a totally different failure, because the audience, I guess, couldn't resonate. They didn't understand why we changed. And I just made a mistake recommending it starting an e-commerce because I thought, well, they were a hotel. You will be closed for the next 3, 6, 1 year. So yeah, it didn't work, but yeah.
Well, listen,
That's how you learn.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap up in a moment, but look, we're heading into another year. And kind of what's the kind of key word that you want the audience to think about when looking ahead for the coming year when it comes to brand strategy in a digital world? And I'll kick it off because it's a pain in the butt question. And I'm just going to say flexibility. I think we've all learned about the ability to shift, change, and move. So, Marta, final advice?
I would say stay true to your brand and what it is about.
Fantastic. Calandra?
I think remember the customers that you do have and focus on them instead of being obsessed with getting more on board. I think focus on what you do have and deliver to them, definitely.
Awesome. Maciej?
Yeah, I think think which customers you can really resurrect, and usually those are not really the same ones that used to be your customers in the past.
Fantastic. And Alexander?
I would say care about what you do and care about your customers, empathy. I think that's the most important because that brings your heart and soul, and then you create a connection. So I think there's not a lot of caring in this world, and yeah.
Well, we started this panel suggesting that we had a lot of time to burn, and somehow we've managed to exceed our time limit and get halfway through the question. We really appreciate all of you viewing us, and thank you so much. We invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, and tell us a story. And thank you to my fellow panelists and to the organizers of Digital Marketing Europe. A great conference and a great way to conclude today's panel. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Walter. Goodbye, everybody.
And all the
Thank
best with your brands.
Great. Well, now we've got that weird moment. It's going to stop streaming in 8 seconds. So here we go. This is that awkward moment.
We're smiling, just smile.